insights. With that being said, I'm really excited to introduce Rishi Devate. Rishi is a technical account manager here at Sumo Logic. Prior to Sumo, Rishi was at ArcSight, where he was responsible for the development of the Identity Monitoring and Compliance Insight Solutions packages. Before ArcSight, Rishi spent 8 years at Oracle, where his most recent position, he was a senior principal consultant as a part of the Security and Identity Management Consulting practice. Rishi holds the CISSP and CISA credentials. He has a master's degree in computer science from the University of Houston and holds a bachelor's degree in computer engineering from the University of Pune. With that said, take it away, Rishi.
Thank you, Jana. So today I'm going to talk about how Sumo Logic can help your IT and business teams gain valuable insight from your Apache web server logs. So today I'm going to start off by talking briefly about the Apache web server itself, and then I'm going to talk about various modes in which Sumo Logic can help you collect that data. Then I'm going to log into the Sumo Logic web application and give you a demo around how Sumo Logic can help you meet various use cases around visitor insights, server operations, and troubleshooting. So the Apache web server, as most of you know, is open source. It's freely available, runs on Unix and Windows, and chances are on any given day, most of the websites that you visit are being serviced by Apache. Okay. So Apache produces two kinds of logs. The first category is the access log, and in the access log, the Apache web server logs every request that has been processed by the server, and also how the server responded to that request. So with this, you get two important pieces of information, one from the business side and one from the operations side. So from the business side, you get to understand your visitor better, as in visitor locations and how they're using your website. And that tells you whether your website is indeed serving your audience in the way you intended it to be. Okay. From an operations standpoint, you can monitor traffic volume, and that will tell you if you are above or below your capacity. And as well as, since the server also records how it responded to clients, you can tell if you get a number of errors, whether there is something wrong on the server side or not. Okay. Apache also has an error log file which records all errors that the web server has seen and diagnostic information about those errors. And with this, you can troubleshoot and find the root cause for these errors, as well as monitor the overall health of the web server, just as we saw before with the access log errors. Okay. So let me go ahead and talk about the various modes in which Sumo Logic can collect your log files. The first mode is where you install a collector in your data center, and the collector has various modes by which it can collect log files from your systems and send them to your account in Sumo Logic. The other mode is in which you don't install any software in your data center. Instead, your logs may be present already in the cloud, for example, in Amazon S3, or Sumo Logic can provide you with a unique HTTP endpoint where you can send your logs to. Okay, so those are the two modes in which Sumo Logic can help you collect your logs. Okay. With that, what I'm going to go ahead and do is open up the Sumo Logic web application and walk you through how we can interact and view Apache log data. Okay. So the first thing is I've logged into my Sumo Logic web application. I've clicked on the collectors tab, and what I have here is a collector that is installed on one of my machines in my environment, and this collector has access to log files, Apache log files, from a number of hosts. Okay, both access as well as error log files. So let me go ahead and pull up a sample access and error log source configuration. Okay, so here I see that it's a local file. The access log is a local file. I've given it a name, and I've specified the file path, where the access log resides on the box. I've put in a source host which ties that data to this host, as well as I've thrown in a source category which tags the kind of data that I'm collecting. Now this is really important because I can use this information in searches later on, as we'll see, to get access log data across all my web servers. Now let's go ahead and look at the error log configuration. And similar to the access log, I've given a name and file path to the error log, as well as I've associated a source host with that error log file. And I've tagged it with the Apache/error source category. And again, similar to the access log, I can use the source category to search for error messages across all my Apache web servers. Okay. So now that we've configured our collection, I see I have a number of messages coming in over the last hour. Let me go ahead and run a few searches to actually interact with those log messages. Okay. So first and foremost, I'm going to pull up the Apache access source log messages. So I can see the raw data, that is the timestamp, IP address, request method, URL, response code, and so on. Now, to extract various important pieces of information from this log file, let me go ahead and use the out-of-the-box Sumo Logic Apache access log parser. So what the parser is going to go ahead and do is it's going to extract the important piece of information in the log file and assign them various fields. So for example, I see the source IP address, which tells me the IP address of the visitor that was visiting my website, request method, the URL that they accessed, the HTTP status code that was delivered back to them, the referrer, and the user agent. User agent is the browser that visitor used to access my website. Okay. Now, some of you have seen this save search as part of your save searches, especially if you have a Sumo Logic free account. This is an Apache. This is the Apache response code summary search, which aggregates all the responses that the server has sent to visitors over time. Right. So I'm basically aggregating the number of successes, redirects, client errors, and server errors that I have sent back to visitors every few minutes. Right. So we will see this we will see a graphical representation of this later on in the dashboards as well. But I just wanted to highlight that this save search is available for those of you who have Sumo Logic free. Okay. So now that we've looked at the Apache access log, let's go ahead and pull up a few searches for the Apache error log. So similar to the access log search, I use the source category to look for Apache error log messages across all of my servers. Okay, so I see all the error messages across servers. And then again, I can use the out-of-the-box Apache error log parser to extract important piece of information from these log messages. So when I do that, I see source IP that was associated with the error, the actual error reason, the file that was associated with the error, and the log level that was present in the log message, right? So this, using these parsers, I can extract these important fields, and as we've seen before, I can run specialized reports to aggregate by a certain field. Okay. Now, since we've interacted with the raw log messages in the search tab, let's go ahead and look at how this data can be represented graphically. Okay. Now, the first thing I want to know is, where are my visitors coming from. Okay, so this monitor that I have here in my dashboard gives me a worldwide picture of where visitors are coming from and visiting my website, right? So I see there's a large concentration around the US, Canada, some in Europe, and some in Asia. Okay, and the monitor below breaks down that same information by country over time, right? So for each time slice that I see over here, I see the country, I see a breakup by country and time slice, right? So I see again here that the US and Canada were the top countries, as well as I see China was another country from which I got the most number of requests. Okay, so based on this information and depending on my online marketing strategy, I can work on getting traffic from other countries as well. Okay, the monitor here is focused on the US alone. So Google Map shows me where my visitors are coming from various parts of the US, and I see most of the traffic is centered around the east and the west coasts, and some in Michigan, and I believe it's Ohio. Okay, now the monitor below goes ahead and breaks that information up by US state for each time slice, right? So these are the total number of requests, and each bar is broken up into the distribution by from where I'm getting requests by US state, right? So I see here Michigan, I see New York, Michigan, New Jersey, California was sending me the most number of requests. And again, depending on my online marketing strategy, I might want to work on getting traffic from other parts of the country as well. Okay, so now that we looked at where visitors are coming from, let's go ahead and look at how they are accessing my website. Okay, so I have this visitor access types dashboard, and the first monitor over here is showing me a distribution, a high-level distribution of platforms that visitors are using. So I see a lot of them are using PCs and Macs, and some are using mobile devices. Okay, and the monitor below breaks that up into browsers and operating systems. So I see here for Mac OS, Safari, Firefox, and Chrome were the browsers, and on Windows it was IE, Chrome, and Firefox. Okay, so what this dashboard tells me is that I need to optimize my website to make sure it's built for rendering on all these different device types, right? Because I want to give my visitors the best experience possible. Okay. So now that we looked at where visitors are coming from and how they're accessing the website, let's look at some statistics around visitor traffic. Okay, so this is a dashboard that shows me visitor traffic statistics. The first monitor that I want to show is the traffic volume and bytes served. So what I have here is the hits over time, website hits over time. I see I'm consistently getting about 8,000 to 9,000 requests, hits every few minutes. And the line below shows me the total megabytes served every few minutes. So I see getting about 40 megs every 2 minutes. I'm serving up about 40 megs every 2 minutes. Okay, and so this monitor can help me plan for additional capacity if I need to. The monitor below is telling me which websites are sending me the most traffic, are referring, are pointing to my website, right? So I can see, so I have a list of websites over here, and then again, this can help me gauge the effectiveness of my online marketing campaign and optimize it as needed. Okay. Here I have the top documents that are requested, so I can see that the blog was the most popular document requested. So I can keep that attractiveness that I have on the blog, and from there maybe I want to link to other pages, other important pages that I want to highlight on my website. The monitor below, this monitor, media type served, shows me the type of data that I'm serving up to my visitors. So you can see I have a lot of image files, PNG, JPEGs, right? Some PDFs. So depending on my data center configuration, I might want to think about caching some of these static files to optimize the speed of my website. And one of the measures of how a website is doing is the kind of responses, is how fast we're serving up responses to visitors, right? So here what I've done is I've identified the slowest URIs. The slowest URIs that, so basically these are the URIs that took the longest time for the Apache server to send back to the customer, right? So in this I can see that my shopping cart URLs were my top two, were the slowest, right? So I need to optimize those JSPs for sure. And again, using this information, I can make sure that I don't have a large server response time. This is one of the features of the Apache web server, that you can actually log how long it takes for the server to respond to a request. Okay. The monitor below, I have the top client IPs, basically the IP addresses from which I got the most amount of traffic. Okay, and just another note here, I'm using the IP address to determine visitor locations, as we saw in the monitor before. Now that we've talked about where visitors are coming from, how they're accessing the website, we looked into some important statistics around the visitor traffic. Let's talk about the operations of the web server. So the first monitor I have here is traffic distribution by server. Now here I have 3 web servers that are serving up traffic, that are serving up responses to visitors, right? So I have 51, 52, 53. These are my web servers. And I can see here that web 53 served up the most number of requests, and web 52 and web 51 were way below the amount of requests that 53 served up, right? So that tells me that I need to go back and revisit my load balancer configuration and make sure that I'm evenly distributing traffic across all these 3 web servers. Okay. And here I have a monitor which says CPU utilization by server. Now this is not Apache log data. This is actually coming from my operating system performance log, and I'm monitoring the CPU utilization by various servers, right? I can see here that 53 had the high CPU utilization, and 52 and 51 were way below that, right? And this is most likely because of the large number of requests that web 53 is serving up compared to the other 2. So here I'm looking at this monitor. I'm looking at web server responses over time. So that's divided up into successes, redirects, client errors, and server errors, right? And this is a graphical representation of the safe search that I showed earlier. Now, speaking of errors, since I see client and server errors, let's dive deeper into those. In this monitor, I'm showing multiple client errors by IP. So what that means is, for these IP addresses, more than one client error was served back to the, a client error message was served back to the browser, right? So this can tell me one or two things. The first possibility is that my website needs to be optimized such that customers are not getting these client errors. The second possibility could be that these IP addresses are trying to do something malicious to my website, okay, by looking for files that are not there, or accessing resources that they don't have access to. Okay, so that's client errors. Let's look at server errors. So here I'm mapping out the server errors over time, and what I see here is there are two server errors, 500 and 503. The server error is sent to the browser when there was an error on the server side, right? There's something happened on the server side, it couldn't process the request something, and then it gave an error back to the browser, right? So there are these two types of errors. The 503 error indicates that the server was busy and couldn't respond in time, and the 500 error tells us that there was an internal server error. Okay, so the 503 is most likely because of the load problem that we talked about earlier, where one server was more loaded than the others. And let's look at what could be the cause for the 500 error. Right? So the monitor here, top server error messages, what I'm showing is a report of the top server messages across all my Apache web server logs. Right, so I'm looking at the Apache error logs and I'm finding out all the different types of messages, and I'm highlighting the ones that occurred the most number of times. Right, so I can see here that there was some database connection errors, and that's most likely why we saw those 500 errors. Now, this is one way to look at server error messages and troubleshoot what may be going on. The other option is to do a more comprehensive troubleshooting. To do more comprehensive troubleshooting, you might want to use the log reduce feature, which goes across all your error messages and gives you a summary report of what those error messages are, and it basically blanks out information that is repeated, that is slightly changing over time, things like IP addresses and timestamps and so on. So that's one thing you could also do with Sumo Logic. Okay, so that's pretty much it from the demo side of things. Let me go ahead and conclude what we learned so far. So, there's valuable information that's present in the Apache log, and Sumo Logic can help with centralizing the collection. As we've seen, we've collected data from multiple Apache web servers. We've also correlated the access and error log data in our server errors use case, as well as we've correlated the traffic by web server and CPU utilization by web server. So two different kinds of message types, access log and operating system level information. Second thing is understanding your visitors. We've seen how Sumo Logic can show you where visitors are coming from and how they're using the website, what platforms they're using to access the website. And finally, we've also seen how you can help troubleshoot and manage your server farm. Okay, so that's about it from the presentation and demo. Jana, are there any questions?
Yeah, and just as a reminder to everyone, we have had a couple questions come in, but I know we had a couple of latecomers. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat window to host and presenter, or you can also enter them in the Q&A window. And with that, let me go ahead and get the first question here. I see you referenced 3 servers in the dashboards. Can Sumo Logic handle 100 servers, up to 100 servers on one graph?
Sure, and that's a pretty common request. We've done that for customers in the past. So one thing you could do is set your categorization to cluster servers in, say, a certain location by category. So for example, all the Apache access logs could be categorized as Apache accessed east or Apache access west, assuming that you have those 2 clusters, right? That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is in your web server naming convention itself, right? If there is something that you want to group by. So say you have web53-cluster1.sumologic.com, what we can do is extract that cluster 1 piece and aggregate by that field. Okay, so we can use it. We can write a search to extract cluster 1, aggregate all the number of requests that are coming by cluster 1, and then show that as a line instead of showing 50 servers that correspond to cluster 1. So those are the 2 ways to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Also, the next question is, how do you determine the slowest URIs?
Okay, so the slowest URIs is by, the slowest URIs, what we've done is we are looking at the Apache, in the Apache web server configuration, you can configure how long it took the server to respond to a client request. So that comes in seconds and microseconds. And then what we're doing is we are calculating the average time by URI and just highlighting the top five slowest URIs.
Okay, great. It looks like we've got another one coming in here. Oh, quite a few actually. Were the dashboards shown out-of-the-box capabilities, or are those developed by the end user?
So those are out-of-the-box capabilities, right? Those are things that we can. Those are things that all the monitors and the monitor types and how you can add data, how you can represent that data. Those are out of the box. Now, if there are specific questions around how to display a certain dashboard, feel free to reference the online help or file a support ticket against Sumo Logic, and we can help you with that.
Okay. When you're using top operator, how do you get the top 1,000 limit, for example, for the slow URLs?
Okay. Okay, so that question is around getting around the top 1,000 limits. So one thing we do to restrict the number of URLs is by, first of all, looking for messages where this time is recorded, first of all. And secondly, what you can also do is you can filter out log messages that have, say, under 2 seconds or 5 seconds, right? So even before you start aggregating. So that will pare down the list considerably, and then you can do aggregation and get the top 5 or 10 URIs.
Okay, and we've got another one here. How do you extend the existing canned Apache log parser in order to support non-standard Apache access logs?
Okay, so for that, feel free to file a feature request, and we can definitely look into how we can add additional rules for you to support your non-standard Apache logs.
Okay. That looks like all the questions we have right now. We'll give it just another second. And there's one right now. Is there a way of restricting the columns displayed when using the Apache parser?
Absolutely. And the way you can restrict the number of columns is by using the fields operator. So say you wanted to only see the IP address and the URL, you can just use fields source IP, URL, and that will only show you those fields for the Apache parser. Okay.
Okay, we've got one more. How can we view what crawlers, i.e. Google bots, are doing?
So that's a great question. And most of the time what we've seen is these crawlers and Google bots show up in, they show up as part of the user agent. So by just looking at the user agent field, you can tell if it's a crawler or a Google bot. And that's the first way of restricting all your messages to only crawlers or bots. And then you can do things like, okay, which IP addresses they're coming from, what URIs they're referencing, and so on, right? Are they looking at only robots.txt, or are they looking at something else?
Okay, give me just one more minute. Here's one more. Any plans to provide Tomcat log parsers?
So that's one of the things that we're still looking at, but feel free to file a feature request, and we can respond back to you with that.
Okay, that looks like all the questions we have today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, we'll be sending out the link to the recorded version of this webinar once it's up on our website. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great day, and thank you, Rishi.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, everyone.